Almost everyone's hating on the Sony FX2, and honestly, I get it. A lot of people expected something different, maybe even an FX3 Mark II. At least I know I did. But after using the FX2 for a few days, I was shocked. So in this video, I'm giving you guys 8 reasons why creators and filmmakers still can't ignore the FX2, and 3 deal breakers that might actually stop you from buying it. And make sure you stick around to the end because I'm telling you the surprising decision I made about whether I'm keeping this camera or not. You know, if you think about it, the camera is basically an FX3 and an A7 IV getting married and having a baby. It was basically made for people like me wanting the FX3 features, but also craving the high megapixels from the A7 IV. Basically, that's what it is. FX2 is the baby. This brings me to the first reason why you can't ignore this camera. It's lightweight and compact. Coming from the A7 III, the A7 IV, and now the ZV-1, I knew the next camera for me had to be smaller and lighter. And since I don't do client work, I don't really need to prove myself with a huge camera to show that I'm legit. And the A7 IV kind of felt too much and more of a liability to juggle around. The first thing I noticed with the FX2 is just how compact and surprisingly lightweight it is. It felt effortless to move the camera around. I think that's a major plus, especially if you're a content creator. And on top of that, the customizable buttons on the FX2 and the layout are a huge plus. They literally made filming more fun for me and actually more efficient. Reason number 2, no more overheating. This one is huge for me. I actually sold my A7 IV because of constant overheating, and the ZV-1 I also have does the same thing. It kills my workflow, and honestly, I've lost confidence in these cameras. There have been many times when I didn't hear the chime that it stopped recording, only to find out later that it stopped. Like the worst feeling, guys. I even went as far as installing cooling fans on the back, but beyond the extra cost, it's just inconvenient to know that you have to keep putting on a fan and take it off while filming. With the FX2, I shot at over 100-degree weather and it never overheated on me once. That alone makes this camera worth it. In fact, while shooting this video, no overheating whatsoever. That I have not experienced in years. Reason number 3, this is the best hybrid camera. Well, actually almost. I'll explain later. Most of us are video first creators, but sometimes we want to snap photos. The FX2 has 33 megapixels, so you could take legit photos, crop in, and the quality will still be there. Compare that with the 12 megapixels on the FX3 and the ZV-1. If you want to enlarge the photo, it's just not going to be the same. If you want to zoom in, it's just not going to be the same. And on top of that, switching between stills and video on the FX2 is now quick and painless, literally just a switch. Reason number 4, low light performance is still good. FX3 and the ZV-1 really shine at the 12,800 ISO with their dual base ISO performance. For filmmakers, that's important since they often shoot darker scenes, but they also have gaffers obviously to help control the light if they needed more. The FX2 doesn't reach those same extreme lows, but it still performs really well at low light at 4,000 ISO. For most creators, it's more than enough. Personally, with my ZV-1, I rarely ever had to push to 12,800. I won't lie, it's good to know that it could go that high, but do you really need that? I don't think it's a deal breaker. Reason number 5, built-in microphones and speakers. I haven't heard any reviews talk about reason number 5. Sony finally gave us better built-in audio, just like the ZV-1. This is huge for creators. If you don't want to be putting in an external mic, it's literally practical and reliable. Like, hear this. This is an audio test coming from the FX2. For creators, this is huge. If you want to move around without plugging in an external mic, it's practical and actually reliable. In addition, Sony improved the speaker, which makes playback so much easier. And you could actually hear what you recorded. Quick note here, some people don't like the headphone and microphone jacks being on the side. Personally, I like the new location. It's just less cables blocking the screen when recording. Some reviews worry about the ports being exposed to dust, but apparently Sony says they're optimized for that. So it's not an issue really. Not sure how true this is, but I guess for now, we're gonna have to just take their word for it. Reason number 6 is the FX2 has some FX3 features. On the outside, the FX2 looks like an FX3, but internally, it has a lot of the FX3 cinema DNA. Yes, it uses a sensor similar to the A7 IV, but an engineer already confirmed that the FX2 has a different color science. I don't know how true this is, but it leans more towards the cinematic look. It's not identical to the FX3 or ZV-1, but it's really close. Unless you have them side by side, you probably won't even be able to tell so much. Another FX3 feature you get with the FX2 is the ability to have the XLR handle for pro audio, and you also get a full-size HDMI and timecode sync. All right, so I'm using the XLR handle. You can see it's connected to XLR, and I'm using my condenser microphone. And it looks like we could actually plug in a guitar, so I'm gonna try that as well. Reason number 7, autofocus is great. Sony is already famous for their autofocus, and with the FX2, they nailed it. Face tracking and eye detection are rock solid and consistently reliable. On top of that, it also has auto tracking features similar to the ZV-1, which makes it useful, especially when creators have to film themselves. Now, I won't lie, when I was in the stills mode, trying to take photos, I was struggling with the autofocus. I have a feeling that has to do more with an update that needs to still be made in the future. And I also made sure to check that all my settings were right, but for some reason, the autofocus wasn't working as well as it did in movie mode. In movie mode, I had 0 issues. Literally, it had me locked on from start to finish. I can't believe I'm gonna say this, but this last reason is number 8. EVF is actually useful. The EVF, also known as the electronic viewfinder, is actually a nice addition. It's not the sharpest EVF in the world, but in person, it's actually better than what I expected, and can actually be a lifesaver when you're shooting out in super bright sunlight. For some reason, online though, or just watching it on videos, it doesn't look as appealing. It looks more like an annoyance, but for some reason, when you see it in person and give it a try, you have a whole new perspective. All right, so that's the good stuff. Now I get it. There are some deal breakers with this camera, so let's talk about them. When you switch to 4K 60, you're gonna get a noticeable crop. And honestly, this was my biggest disappointment with the FX2. I get that the Sony couldn't give us every single feature so they could sell their other models, but if it didn't have this limitation, the FX2 would literally be the best hybrid camera out there, period. To make matters worse, if you turn on dynamic active stabilization, the crop gets even bigger, and sometimes even with that mode, I notice little jitters in the image. Now, of course, there are workarounds like stepping back or getting wider lens, but that's just extra money and work you don't have to do. And honestly, after using the FX3 and the ZV-1 with no crop at 4K 60, it's really hard to go back. Deal breaker number 2, now I know I said the EVF is useful, but the EVF also gets in the way. As nice as the EVF is, it actually blocks accessories. Mounting a DJI mic or a shotgun mic can get awkward with the EVF in the way. And since the EVF isn't removable, you're stuck with it. Small rig does make a cage that might help, but honestly, I could still see it being an issue, especially with the top handle from Sony themselves, or if you're gonna use an external V-mount battery pack. Come on guys, like, did you guys not try this at quality control check? Like, when companies do this, I literally wonder like if there's somebody in there either got shut up, like, hey, shut up, we don't care. I don't know, like, you guys get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like some things are just like, no-brainer. I digress. Deal breaker number 3, a slow sensor readout. I almost didn't include this, but I have to. The FX2 has about a 26 millisecond sensor readout. What that means is if you move the camera quickly, you'll notice something like a jello-like wobble in the image. Ordinarily, I'll ignore it, but once your eyes catches it, it's hard to unsee it, especially coming from the FX3 and the ZV-1 that has just about an 8 millisecond readout. This is pretty disappointing. Should you buy this camera? So here's the bottom line. If you're a creator or a filmmaker who wants cinema features without jumping up to the FX3, FX6, FX9, this camera is for you. If you've been eyeing the FX3 but just can't justify the price, this camera is for you. But if the deal breakers that we mentioned just basically eats you up, then unfortunately, the camera is not for you. For me personally, I've decided not to buy the FX2 yet. The 4K 60 crop is too limiting, especially after coming from the ZV-1 with no crop. It's really hard to go back. That being said, I do have access to a ZV-1 for now. I'd absolutely buy the FX2 though, if I did not have it. But I am waiting for the FX3 Mark II, and I wanna see what those specs look like. It needs to have at least 24 megapixels for me to buy it. But if it doesn't, I'm willing to kinda forego the 4K 60 because there is actually a positive to it. With the FX2, it does allow you to shoot in APS-C mode, so it allows you to kind of zoom in more than your lens. So it's kind of having like two lenses in one. Now that you know whether the FX2 is right for you, watch this next video here where I break down the best battery setup for your camera rig. A battery that lasts all day, doubles down as a power bank, and even has touchscreen and app control. I haven't seen one like that. Trust me, you'll want this for your next build.